Thank you. The final item of business is a member's business debate on motion 17933 in the name of Anas Sarwar on the 80th year of Scotland Citizens Advice Service. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Can I ask those members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now? And I call on Anas Sarwar to open the debate. Mr Sarwar, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I am pleased to speak in support of my motion and in support of the 80th year of Scotland's Citizens Advice Service. The Citizens Advice Service is a well-known, well-respected and independent service that every year is used by almost 300,000 clients, or I prefer to call them citizens. Citizens who trust the Citizens Advice Service to give them advice and champion their right on the issues that matter to them. They win extra funds for those hit hardest by welfare reform. They campaign to get energy suppliers to cut their tariffs and improve their customer services. They hold to account dodgy payday loan companies, and independent research shows that the work of the Scottish Citizens Advice Service contributes more than £166 million to the common good in Scotland. Working in local communities across Scotland and helping people to know their rights and help them get their lives back on track. And crucially, at these difficult times, the service is free. And this free service is only possible because it is one that is delivered by nearly 2,500 volunteers working in citizens' advice bureaus all over Scotland. I'm proud that my mum was a previous Citizens Advice Bureau volunteer, my sister was a previous Citizens Advice Bureau volunteer, and I hope one day my kids too will be volunteers of the Citizens Advice Bureau too. The average time given to volunteering each week is 6 hours. If those volunteers were paid the average wage for those 6 hours, the additional wage bill for the CABs across Scotland every year would be £10 million per annum. This fantastic contribution is the lifeblood of the Citizens Advice work, and I want tonight to pay tribute to every one of those volunteers for the time they give up to help others in need of help, support and advice. But Deputy Presiding Officer, it's a service that is seeing increased demand and is coming under increased pressure. It's a pressure that's building because of a number of factors. An increase in demand for financial advice, changes in people's benefits, the catastrophic impact of the introduction of universal benefit, made even worse by the level of sanctions being imposed and the introduction of the benefit cap, which has hit 13,000 households in Scotland. They're supporting benefit applications, with applications for crisis grants from the Scottish Welfare Fund increasing by 11% in 2018-19, as more people in Scotland turn to the fund due to the cost of living crisis. An increase in the number of people who are in work poverty and increased use of food banks, with Citizens Advice Services reporting 1 in 4 workers struggling financially. 1 in 4 people in work but struggling financially. They're also providing support to EU nationals who have applied for the EU settlement scheme. There's increased levels of fuel poverty, and they're also dealing with the consequences of an increase in the number of scams, with almost half of all Scots reporting being targeted by a scam. And only last week, they provided advice to consumers hit by the collapse of Thomas Cook. Across a range of areas, Citizens Advice Scotland are dealing with an increase in the number of people seeking support. But they and others are having to do so and provide this level of advice at an increasingly difficult time of financial support. One example, for example, in my own local area of Glasgow, it is reported that the council are currently considering reducing funding for advice agencies by up to 40%. That would have a devastating impact on advice services, but more importantly on people who rely on those advice services. And this is a pattern that we are seeing repeated right across Scotland, where local authorities are facing significant budget pressures. So I say to the Minister, I know members' debates are meant to be collegiate, and this one is collegiate, but I do say to the Minister and also the Cabinet Secretary for Finance, we must look at the decisions that are made in 2 parliaments, whether that be welfare reform changes made at Westminster, or indeed the funding model that is decided here for our local authorities in this chamber, and the implications that has on council chambers across the country, and then the implication that has on vital services and for the most vulnerable in our communities who rely on those vital services. And according to SPICE, councils spend more than 2/3 of their budgets on services that support and target the poorest and most vulnerable. So this focus of expenditure means that when dealing with budget reductions, councils have little option but to make most of their savings from services which are then actually used by people from lower income groups. If you spend disproportionately more of your money on people who rely on those services coming from more vulnerable backgrounds and you're forced to cut your budgets, you will make cuts into communities where they rely on these services to survive. So I would urge the Minister to reflect on the implications of decisions that the Scottish Government takes and how that impacts on the Citizen Advice Service now and into the future. Presiding Officer, if the Citizen Advice Service didn't exist, there would be a huge gap in support services, a desperate need for help and advice that would not be able to be met by public agencies. There is nothing else like it at a national level. So Citizens Advice Scotland deserves our thanks for the work that they have done in the past 80 years. Their volunteers deserve our thanks for the work that they have done over the last 80 years. But actually they deserve more than just our thanks. They need the support of government and politicians across all levels and all political parties so they can continue to provide the support and advice for another 80 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Sarwar. I say to members, I have 11 members wishing to speak. I therefore will be ruthless and keep members to 4-minute speeches. You have been warned. Annabel Ewing, followed by Jeremy Balfour. Ms Ewing, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to have been called to speak in this members' debate celebrating the 80th anniversary of Scotland's Citizens Advice Service, and I too congratulate Anna Sarwar on securing the debate this evening. From the first Citizens Advice Bureau established in 1939 in Glasgow, we have seen a very significant development of the service to the current extensive network throughout Scotland of 59 bureaus serving individuals the length and breadth of our country. The excellent service provided includes high-quality advice that is free, impartial and confidential. For some years now, the biggest caseload involves benefit and debt issues, but advice also is provided on employment rights, on housing and on fuel poverty, to name but a few. Also, Citizens Advice have a unique advocacy role and help many individuals with their appeals to Social Security and other tribunals. And also, it is worth noting that Citizens Advice also campaign for social change on the issues that come through their door. And in recent years, we have seen excellent campaigns mounted on, for example, funeral poverty and indeed on fuel poverty. And perhaps one of the more extensive reports in recent times has focused on the new universal credit benefit being introduced by the DWP. Indeed, the problems and hardship being experienced by individual claimants have been so severe that Citizens Advice Scotland have called for a halt to the rollout of this benefit so that serious policy issues can be addressed. Citizens Advice have also called for a reduction in the time people have to wait for their first payment. And this is an example of the vital work that Citizens Advice do, because the pressure very much needs to be kept up on the UK Government to make changes to this benefit, which is causing such hardship to our citizens. And in my own constituency of Cowdenbeath, I understand that of the some 1,936 contacts over the last year, some 583 cases have involved problems with universal credit. And what a lot that says about the state of Westminster's social security system, Presiding Officer. And the question that must be asked is, whither the safety net now? In bringing my remarks towards a conclusion, Presiding Officer, I wish to mention that in addition to the activities I have outlined already, Citizens Advice Scotland also undertakes specialist projects, for example, for members of the armed forces in partnership with Poppy Scotland and others, and also in the area of kinship carers. And one very timely specialist project is the EU Citizen Support Scheme delivered by Citizens Advice Scotland. And this scheme, of course, is intended to ensure that EU citizens in Scotland can access any help they may need in applying online to continue to live in the UK post 30th June 2021. Significant Scottish Government funding has been made available to allow Citizens Advice to operate a national helpline, which is free and impartial. Also, there is a solicitor-led helpline as well for complex cases. And in the Cowdenbeath Bureau, an EU settlement support service worker has been in place since April of this year, dealing with around 60+ cases. I very much welcome this much needed service, and it underlines in these alarming times the very important message of this SNP Scottish Government to EU citizens living in our country, that this is your home, you are welcome here, and we want you to stay. In conclusion, Presiding Officer, I wish to add my congratulations to Citizens Advice Scotland on their 80th anniversary. I thank them for all that they do for individuals across Scotland who need a bit of help. And I commend in particular the some 2,370 volunteers across the Citizens Advice Scotland network who, in the past year alone, have contributed over 760,000 hours of their time. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms June. And wonderful example you've set. I call Jeremy Balfour, to be followed by Kenneth Gibson. Mr Balfour.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I thank the member for bringing forward this debate this afternoon? And can I also add my congratulations to CAB on its birthday celebrations and all the work that it's done. And like the previous two speakers, I want to put on record my particular thanks to the over 2,000 volunteers that give up their time and provide such an excellent service. Without those volunteers, CAB would not exist. I would not be able to provide the service that we all come to respect here across the chamber. I think one of CAB's great strengths is that it's independent from local government and from national government. And as social security is rolled out further and further in Scotland, I think it's going to have a really important role to play within the new social security system. I hope that that role will be recognised both by national government and by local government, because the same story that we were hearing about Glasgow in regard to its funding being cut is a similar story I expect across the whole of Scotland. And CAB can only exist and provide that role if it has the appropriate funding both from national and from local government. And I think it is a duty on all of us, whichever political party we represent, that we make sure that that happens. If the new social security system is going to work well here in Scotland, there will need to be independent advice at the start of a process and all the way through the process for people making their applications. And that is why the funding is so important. I think we have seen CAB develop lots of new services again that have been mentioned by previous speakers. I think the help to claim in regard to universal credit has been a real success. I think if we look at the number of people who are accessing that service and most importantly the quick response that they get and the independent advice that they get, it has been very encouraging, and I think that is a service that has been very helpful. The other area I think I would want to highlight in closing, Deputy Presiding Officer, is in regard to the work that they do at tribunals. Tribunals can often be frightening places. Claimants often have never been there before. They're unsure about what they are meant to say and how they are meant to act. And I know from personal experience, having worked as a member of tribunals, that CAB often come alongside people, support them both legally, but perhaps as importantly, support them emotionally through that process. And they are there to represent them. And I think that dual role of emotional support and legal support is something that is almost unique to any other organisation, certainly that I know in Scotland. So I do hope that this motion will be well debated. I do hope that all parties will support, not only in words, but in actions in regard to the funding that CAB requires. And again, I wish my best to CAB for its next 80 years. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much, Mr Balfour. I call Kenneth Gibson, to be followed by Jackie Bailey. Mr Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I too thank Anas Sarwar for securing today's debate, marking the 80th anniversary of Scotland's Citizens Advice Service. In 1938, with a world war looming, the National Council of Social Services, the forerunner of today's National Council of Voluntary Organisations, established a group to investigate how the needs of the civilian population in wartime could be met. The group concluded that Citizens Advice Bureau should be established throughout the country. Accordingly, on 4th September, the day after Great Britain and France declared war on Germany, over 200 Citizens Advice Bureau were established across the UK. Scotland's first bureau opened in Glasgow, followed by others throughout Scotland. During the Second World War, more than 60 bureaus staffed by volunteers handled inquiries relating to wartime issues, such as tracing relatives whose homes had been bombed, locating prisoners of war and lost ration books. Post-war, despite having its funding cut by the Ministry of Health, Citizens Advice Bureau continued with support from charities such as the Nuffield Foundation, Carnegie Trust and Joseph Rowntree Foundation. In the 1980s, the Scottish Association of Citizens Bureau became fully independent from the formerly UK-wide Citizens Advice Bureau. The Scottish Citizens Advice Network now comprises 59 bureaux and with the Extra Help Unit in Glasgow provides free, independent, confidential, impartial, high-quality advice to clients. Citizens Advice Scotland serves a dual purpose. Firstly, it provides free access to quality information and advice for consumers. In that function in 2018 alone, Citizens Advice Scotland dealt with 245,000 clients, helped complete almost 50,000 benefits and other forms, and concluded 4,700 tribunals and court appeals. During 2018, Citizens Advice Scotland also helped clients access £130.7 million in benefits, return of overpaid bills, etc. The main areas of assistance offered in 2018 related to benefits, debt, employment, housing and legal proceedings. It should be noted that most people using such services are from less prosperous communities. Alongside providing high-quality advice, Citizens Advice Scotland advocates and campaigns to achieve positive social change across Scotland and actively engages with decision-makers in government, companies and regulators to achieve change that will benefit consumers. For example, since 2015, Citizens Advice has campaigned on tackling fuel poverty. The Scottish Government commissioned Citizens Advice Scotland to produce a report which informed and directly shaped the Scottish Government's funeral costs plan. This represents a tangible example of Citizens Advice Scotland's vital advocacy work. Its 2019-20 advocacy plan, Delivering a Positive Change, includes a campaign for your benefit. This is designed to empower people to solve their own problems. It will raise awareness of the eligibility criteria of social security entitlements, tackle scammers and destigmatise problem debt. Such work ensures that the voices of clients are heard and acted on by both local and national policy makers. In 2018, Scotland's Citizens Advice Bureau were staffed by over 3,340 workers, including 2,370 volunteers, who contributed more than 760,000 hours of their time. And this voluntary work was valued at almost £11 million. I myself volunteered in 1986 and 87, and the experience gained in dealing with the public proved invaluable when I was subsequently elected to Glasgow District Council in 1992. In 2018, Citizens Advice Scotland received annual funding totalling almost £6.5 million from the Scottish Government and the UK Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Across Scotland, local authorities often support Bureau too. Unfortunately, despite all the vital work which colleagues have outlined in this debate, my constituents lost the services provided by North Ayrshire Citizens Advice Service when Labour-run North Ayrshire Council withdrew core funding and the last Bureau closed in March last year. This was a penny-wise, pound-foolish decision, given that in 2018, £10 was returned to the community in client gains for every pound of core advice funding offered by Citizens Advice Scotland. Presiding Officer, to quote Lord Beveridge from 1948, Citizens Advice Bureau make the world appear to many citizens in distress to contain some element of reason and friendship. The advisor at a Citizens Advice Bureau is only a fellow citizen with time and knowledge and, if he is worthy of his position, with infinite patience. This remains true today.
Thank you very much. I now call Jackie Bailey to be followed by Alison Johnson. Ms Bailey, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and let me also start by congratulating Anas Sarwar on securing debating time and for giving me the opportunity to praise all the fantastic work that the Citizens Advice Bureaus do, both in my constituency and across Scotland for the last 80 years. I have a particular soft spot, Presiding Officer, for Citizens Advice Bureaus, having been the local authority officer in the late 90s who introduced the first Citizens Advice Bureau in Eastern Bartonshire. The Citizens Advice Bureaus are a fantastic institutions that have helped hundreds of thousands of Scots over the years. Their dedicated staff and over 2,000 Scottish volunteers offer free, impartial advice when members of the public find themselves in an uncertain financial situation, perhaps needing advice on how best to raise a family on a low income or when they are affected by things like scams. But it is wider than just advice on social security. If you need consumer advice or advocacy on everything from water to energy, then the Citizens Advice Bureau is where you can go. No problem is too small or too complicated for them to handle, and they will always try their best to help a client to the best of their ability. Citizen Advice Scotland and their local bureaus have run a number of campaigns over the years which has raised awareness amongst members of the public on important issues that directly affect them. For example, Citizens Advice Scotland recently launched a campaign around scam awareness. This helped to equip people with the skills they need to spot scams, tackle the stigma that surrounds scams, and to promote the importance of reporting when people suspect that they are being scammed. With almost 40% of over 65s being victims of over-the-phone scams, I know that this campaign made hundreds of constituents in my area, many of them elderly, feel far safer and more prepared. There are over 70 hard-working CAB volunteers in my constituency, helping residents in both Western Bartonshire and Argyll and Bute. Anyone who knows my constituency knows that it is a huge geographical area to cover. There are offices dotted all over the constituency to make it as convenient as possible for local residents to seek out advice when they need it. The lengths that both the hundreds of volunteers and the 33 staff in Western Bartonshire and Argyll and Bute go to in order to ensure my constituents have easily accessible advice is highly commendable. And I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank them for their fantastic work that they do day in and day out. The selfless support that these volunteers have provided in my area adds up to over 20,000 hours donated annually to help offer advice to local residents. The monetary value of their donated time is over £350,000 a year. And it's important that this is recognised by funders, and I entirely associate myself with the remarks made by Anas Sarwar. Between just January and June 2019 alone, Western Bartonshire Citizens Advice Bureau helped with over 6,000 inquiries, which covered a range of issues from debt advice, taxation queries, and issues arising from the rollout of universal credit. That's a huge number of inquiries to deal with, and the fact that so many people feel comfortable going to them for advice and support is testament to the trusted service that they provide. And it isn't just advice that the CAB offer. They get life-changing results for their clients. In 2018-19 in Western Bartonshire, they helped over 4,800 clients gain £2.8 million. The Bureau in Argyll and Bute helped a further 1,100 clients gain over £700,000 in money owed. It's a huge amount of money, will greatly improve lives of thousands of my constituents. And whilst the CAB help people on low incomes, it is important to recognise that actually it is the case that they help people from every social class. Everybody uses the CAB as a trusted source of advice and information.
And there you must conclude.
It is truly, presiding officer,
there you must
an
conclude.
all-citizen service.
I call the next speaker, Alison Johnson, followed by Beatrice Wishart. You're an old hand, you should know better. Alison Johnson, followed by Beatrice Wishart.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm very glad to be able to wish Scotland's Citizens Advice Service a very happy 80th birthday, and I'd like to thank Anas Sarwar for providing the Chamber with an opportunity to do that and to highlight the incredible work done by Citizens Advice Bureau and their volunteers across Scotland. As we've heard, Citizens Advice assists people with a whole host of issues, but a major part of its work does focus on social security, and I'd like to focus mainly on that in my short time this evening. Across Scotland, we have over £1 billion worth of unclaimed social security payments. And on this International Day of Older Persons, it's important to note that SPICE estimates that £190 million of pension credit goes unclaimed every year. There's £200 million worth of child tax credit unclaimed, 224 of working tax credit, and £260 million worth of housing benefit. And that's not even the whole picture. So getting all the money where it needs to go and where it's desperately needed, that is a huge task, and Citizens Advice is playing an important role in this. Now, the Money Talk team is a Scottish Government-funded project that delivers money advice so that people aren't paying more for essential goods and services than they need to, and that they're getting all of the social security entitlements. The most recent data shows that the Money Talk team has helped a total of 3,198 people be better off by more than £6 million. That's an average household benefit of £1,850, and that was done in just 9 months. So it shows that comprehensive welfare rights advice makes a real difference to people. I also commend Citizens Advice on their new Check My Council Tax tool. That allows people to find out whether they're eligible for a reduction or an exemption. And this is really important because Scottish Government figures show that 80,000 fewer households receiving council tax reductions have received those reductions than receive council tax benefits under the previous scheme. And even when people apply for support, it's not always straightforward. And in my experience helping constituents, citizens' advice are always on hand. They're always there to offer expert advice and support. I don't think there's a person in this chamber that would claim that the social security system is one that is as easy as it should be to navigate. Last year, citizens' advice assisted people to complete 40,000 social security forms in 4,700 tribunals, and 88% of those cases were won or upheld. So this is really important work, and we must make sure that we fund it properly. As well as helping people when they need it most, citizens' advice also plays a hugely important role in improving policy. They assist so many people with social security, so they have a great deal of insight into how the devolved social security system can improve, can be better than the one that we've inherited from the UK government. For example, the Citizens Alert System that allows Bureau to submit to Citizens Advice Scotland case notes demonstrating the impact of policies and services which they feel are failing to meet clients' needs. That provides really clear evidence to policymakers where things are going wrong. It means we don't have to keep repeating the same mistakes. The Scottish Green Party's successful push to ban unnecessary disability benefits amendments was based in part on a survey of citizens' advice clients and advisors, the results of which showed that the highest priority for the Scottish social security system was reducing unnecessary assessments by making the best use of evidence that already exists. All this in just one area of CASA's work. On transport too, citizens' advice has been highlighting how much more we need to do so everyone in Scotland has access to a good quality bus service. I will close, Presiding Officer, by just saying that the Chamber owes a huge debt of gratitude to citizens' advice services across the country, and on behalf of the Scottish Greens, I'd like to thank it for all it does for us. Thank you.
I call Beatrice Wishart to be followed by Rona McCann. Ms Wishart, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm delighted to take part in this debate, and I'd like to thank Anna Sarwar for securing it. And although I'll focus on the work of my own Citizen Advice Bureau in Shetland, I want to begin by saying in general terms, I'm speaking on behalf of my Lib Dem colleagues who've asked me to say that they're all great supporters of the Bureau in their area. Others have spoken so far in the debate about the great work done by the Scottish CAB network as a whole. It's a service that we could not do without, and every day they help people avoid debt, poverty and homelessness. I want to give members some idea of the particular work that's undertaken by the Bureau in Shetland, which has been open since 1992. As well as the main office in Lerwick, the Bureau also offers regular outreach advice sessions in the North Isles of Unstiel and Walser, as well as in Hillswick, Bray, Walls, Bixter, Scalloway and Leavenwick. Today, the Shetland Bureau is run by Karen Janssen and her excellent team. Last year, they saw more than 1,700 clients, giving nearly 6,500 pieces of advice. In the course of that work, they helped those clients gain a total of 1.7 million in compensation, unclaimed benefits, withheld wages, etc. So that's not only a terrific result to all those individual families, many of whom will have really been struggling, it's also a significant boost to the local economy, as that money remains in the local economy, spent on essentials in local shops and businesses. Like other CABs across the country, the top item Shetland deals with is social security, but in our case it's also followed by utilities. Fuel poverty and fuel provision are particularly big issues for the communities in Shetland. We have a wet and windy climate, with wind chill a major factor, and old housing stock, which is not very efficient, energy efficient. Like many other bureaus, Shetland CAB has specialist energy advisors who help people who are worried about high energy costs. These advisors can help people make sense of their energy bills, check whether they're on the correct tariff, support them to consider switching supplier to save money. And if there's a problem with bills, they can negotiate with the energy company and put into place a manageable payment plan. They can also advise if somebody would be eligible for support to improve the energy efficiency in their home, and can offer home visits from a specialist advisor who would help to plan how to cut your carbon emissions, possibly accessing the financial support available to help you switch to renewables. And this specialist energy advice is, of course, just one of the services that Shetland CAB offers, and is offered by many other CABs across the country too. The previous 14 years before I came here, I was the MP's caseworker and worked with staff and volunteers at the Shetland Bureau over that time. We referred cases to each other. For example, when the MP's intervention would assist with a complex immigration case, or when CAB was best placed to assist a constituent with a benefit appeal. And when dealing with social security casework, I've often suggested to constituents that they should contact the Shetland Bureau to ask for a welfare benefits check to ensure that they are receiving all the benefits to which they are entitled. So I want to join others in wishing happy birthday to the Citizens Advice Network across Scotland, to all the staff and volunteers, especially in the Shetland CAB, for the valuable and respected service they provide. Like me, I'm sure the people of Shetland wish them many more years to come.
Thank you very much, Ms Wishart. I now call Rona Mackay to be followed by Annie Wells. Ms Mackay, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to take part in this important debate and thank my colleague Anna Sarwar for bringing it to the Chamber. As this year marks the 80th anniversary of Citizens Advice Network in Scotland, I welcome this opportunity to praise the great work done by the 59 Citizens Advice Bureaus serving the local communities across Scotland. From its inception in Glasgow in 1939 during World War II to the present day, Citizens Advice Scotland has been a beacon of hope for the most vulnerable and marginalised in our society. It's been a continuous positive voice for social change during this period, while simultaneously offering free, confidential and impartial advice to anyone that needs it. I cannot stress enough the importance of the service CAB provides and the difference it's made to so many lives. Everyone, regardless of background or income, should have access to justice. CAB provides an avenue of hope for many, and the impact it's had over the decades can't be understated. In the 2018 to 19 period alone, CAB advised over 275,000 clients, issued over 730,000 pieces of advice and put £131 million back in people's pockets. It's also helped to complete almost 40,000 benefit forms and won or upheld 88% of the 4,500 tribunal and court actions they were involved with. These figures are but a fraction of the great work that CAB has done over the years that nevertheless serve as evidence of the great work that they do. Of course, none of this would be possible without the amazing staff and volunteers up and down the country that ensure bureaus are open and ready to help anyone that comes to their door. Indeed, I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight the efforts of bureau staff and volunteers in my own constituency of Strathkelvin and Bearsden. East Bartonshire Citizens Advice Bureau, of which I was a former board member, is based just a few streets from my own constituency office, and it does phenomenal work in the community. I've heard firsthand, I think as we all have, from constituents who've sought the advice from CAB, just how caring and dedicated the team are, as well as the passion they have for social welfare. Anna Sarwar articulated the horrendous impact benefit cuts and welfare changes are having, and this illustrates why CAB is so and vital role in society. I'd like to highlight what the Scottish Government has done to support the work of CAB in recent years, such as the government-funded Money Talk team, the project that aims to deliver money advice to low-income families by ensuring they're receiving all benefits and grants they're entitled to. In just 9 months, the project has helped over 3,100 people, bringing in an average household benefit of £1,850, money these families would otherwise not have seen. And I'd like to draw attention to CAB's EU Citizen Support Scheme mentioned by Annabel Ewing, a new specialist helpline service for EU citizens resident in Scotland and aimed at helping those citizens and families apply to continue living here. I held several EU surgeries in my own constituency along with CAB, and I'm indebted to their help as we assisted people to apply for settled status. To conclude, Presiding Officer, I would reiterate that the work done by CAB over this 80-year period and the licence change is monumental. Whilst it's a damning indictment on the state of social welfare in this country that so many people are reliant on their service, it's nevertheless an essential one, and I would like to thank everyone involved in helping those who need help. I congratulate Citizens Advice Scotland on its 80-year anniversary, and I hope the Scottish Government can continue to work in tandem with CAB for the next 80 years and beyond to ensure equality and access to justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Mackay. Before I call Annie Wells, could I say, due to the number of members who wish to speak in this debate, I am minded to accept a motion without notice under Rule 8.14.3 to extend the debate by up to 30 minutes. And I invite Anna Sarwar to move such a motion without notice.
Moved, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. The question is that the debate be extended by up to 30 minutes. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I now call Annie Wells to be followed by Sarah Boyd. Ms Wells, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and to Anna Sarwar for bringing this to debate. This is a great opportunity to highlight the fantastic work of Citizens Advice Bureaus across Scotland and to raise awareness of the high quality services it provides. It goes without saying that Citizens Advice is an invaluable service to many. With the first CAB opening in 1939 in Glasgow, it's now in its 80th year, and that's impressive indeed for any organisation. Its ability to adapt with the times and evolve to fit people's changing needs is reflected in the journey it's been on since World War II. Whereas during the war, as we've heard, it dealt with inquiries related to wartime issues such as tracing relatives of whose homes had been bombed and lost ration books, it now offers advice to clients on anything from debt to benefits, employment rights and fuel poverty, to name but a few. Most importantly, this is free, independent, impartial and confidential advice. And due to the organisation's extensive network with bureaus up and down the country, making this advice to be accessed by anyone is a huge feat. Just to get the sense of how many people, and we've heard before, use the service, in 2018-19, the network advised over 270,000 clients, issuing over 730,000 pieces of advice. Its self-help website, Advice for Scotland, received nearly 4 million page views in the same year. And since I became an MSP, I visited the Citizens Advice in Maryhill to see firsthand the quality of service it provides, and I was struck by both the passion of the staff as well as the knowledge they had on such a wide range of topics. And what might not be realised by many is that the volunteers still account for the majority of people working in the bureaus. In 2018-19, over 2,300 volunteers contributed more than 760,000 hours of their time to supporting those in need. And I'd like to put on record my own personal thanks to all the volunteers as well as staff who work hard to provide CAB services. It really does make a difference to the lives of people who use them. And as we've heard, as well as the advice it provides to individual clients, Citizens Advice also has a number of national projects. The Armed Services Advice Project, for example, provides information and support to current and former members of the Armed Forces community. The Independent Patient Advice and Support Service provides free, confidential support to patients and their families in dealings with the NHS. And PensionWise, an impartial service, providing guidance on pension options and how each could affect their tax and benefits. These are incredibly specialist services, which for the people they target will no doubt be extremely helpful. Citizens Advice recognises that there are times in a person's life where they are perhaps more vulnerable and that they need tailored support. Significantly, Citizens Advice also carries out its own research, policy work and campaigning on key issues. This summer, it launched its own Scams Awareness programme to prevent consumers from the financial loss that caused so many distress and misery. And over the next 6 months, it plans to run campaigns on employment rights, energy and personal debt. To finish today, I would like again to thank Anna Sarwar for highlighting the excellent work that CAB do. It's an organisation that so many know and appreciate, and for many, it's a first port of call with the need of vital support. As shown by the breadth of its work and its many great campaigns, Citizens Advice will no doubt be around in another 80 years to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Sarah Boyack to be followed by Bill Kidd. Ms Boyack, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I also want to thank Anas Sarwar for securing this debate tonight. I think everybody has highlighted the importance that CAS provides to our constituents day in, day out, providing a service, providing a support that is not available elsewhere and can make a huge impact on people's lives, whether it's preventing homelessness, supporting advice on energy bills, or access to debt advice. And that advice can be absolutely critical to helping people overcome huge challenges in their lives. As we all live in an increasingly digital world, we have to acknowledge that that is in itself a huge barrier for far too many people to deal with. These can be very complicated forms to fill in that can run to multiple pages. And when it comes to advice on social security or benefits that people are entitled to, as many colleagues have said, the advice that people can get from a local CAB office can make the difference between a constituent getting support that they're entitled to or being left in debt and destitution. And it's not just the fact that forms are digital, it's also because of the complexity of forms and because of the failings of the universal credit system. So what's crucial here is that CAB advice is free and it's available. And I want to agree very strongly with the point that Anas Sarwar made in his opening remarks about the importance of keeping it local. CAB offices are open and available, people, to sit down, talk through the issue that's challenging them. It could be an extremely stressful issue, and it can often be a long time before somebody actually goes and seeks advice. So that one-to-one support, that specialist, that free knowledge is crucial. And I do want to join others in thanking the staff at local CAB offices who deserve our thanks for ensuring the continuity of service under the pressures they're facing, for their compassion and their commitment to the service. But I do also finally want to thank the volunteers, because without their help it would simply not be possible to provide the range of experience and expertise across the whole of the country. And I know from talking to volunteers myself how rewarding they find that experience. It is challenging, it can be emotional, but it's rewarding. They're putting something back to society. And for many of those volunteers can actually be a stepping stone to enter paid employment or further education. So tonight we're debating a huge resource that people provide, and it's one that we directly benefit from as MSPs. I know one of the first cases I came back to deal with as an MSP, it was the local CAB office that I went to seek support from in terms of welfare advice. It's all about giving people the right to access the knowledge and the information that they need. And I want to just finish on the point that every £1 funded to cover core advice services generates £10 being returned to the wider community in terms of financial benefits to our constituents. And as other colleagues have said, that work is invaluable and needs to be continued. So I hope in his closing remarks, the Minister will say how the Scottish Government intends to support CAS's work going forward. There's the advocacy work, the support work and the advice work. And given the huge financial pressures that have been highlighted today, it's absolutely crucial that the Citizens Advice Service in Scotland gets the support not just of us as MSPs, but of our government as well. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. Now I call Bill Kidd to be followed by Alec Rowley. Mr Rowley is the last speaker in the open debate. Mr Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thanks to Anas Sarwar. Today we've had the opportunity to recognise the important role of Citizens Advice Scotland, or CAS, prompted by the fact that 2019 marks 80 years of the organisation's outstanding work. We've heard from the contributions of my fellow MSPs how Citizens Advice has helped people across Scotland, and my constituency of Glasgow Anniesland is no exception. I've seen firsthand the free advice and hands-on help provided by Citizens Advice. Often this assistance is provided to people who otherwise have limited support. The stability provided by the reliability of Citizens Advice acts as an anchor to people during difficult periods in times of uncertainty and financial pressure. Drumchapel Citizens Advice Bureau, based in my constituency, provides invaluable assistance to many people. Earlier this summer, I worked with Citizens Advice Charity to help advertise their Help to Claim service throughout the constituency. This was to raise awareness of the practical support they provide to help people access universal credit. Through this service, Citizen Advice staff show people how to set up an email address, open a bank account and take other steps, overcoming what would otherwise be barriers to support. I think Citizen Advice plays a role in bringing about moments of equity. And what I mean by equity is the creation of a level playing field where those born into disadvantage are given more support than others. This goes some way in reducing disadvantages and creating the space for equal opportunity. There's an illustration you can find easily online that shows the difference between equity and equality. This illustration shows three people watching a sport, but a fence is in the way and blocking the view. There's a tall man who can see over the fence and watch the game, a man of medium height who, when standing on his tiptoes, can just about see over the fence. Then there's a short man who cannot see the game at all. An act of equality would give each of these three men a box, all of the same size, for them to stand on. With the box, the tall man can still see over the fence, the medium man can now see perfectly well, but the short man still cannot see the game at all. An act of equity, however, does not give a box to the tall man. Instead, it gives the man of medium height one box and the short man two boxes. Both the men of medium height and the short man can now see the game just as well as the tall man. Equity gives the most support to the person with the most disadvantage. Offering support to those in poverty by giving free financial advice is an act of equity. By providing assistance with things that are crucial to participating in society, like setting up a bank account, Citizens Advice Scotland is enacting equity. Over the past year, Citizen Advice have helped clients across Scotland to be £131 million better off. They have assisted with over 4,700 tribunals and court cases, with over 88% of cases being upheld or won. These examples evidence how this organisation promotes equity across Scotland, and I would like to take this final moment at the end of my contribution to thank Citizen Advice, its staff and all of the volunteers for their dedicated work throughout Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure we all followed the boxes. Now I call Alec Rowley, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would also thank Anas Sarwar for securing this debate today and congratulate Citizens Advice Scotland on their 80 years. In Fife, we have Citizens Advice and Rights Fife, which incidentally is marking its 22nd anniversary today, so congratulations to them. The Fife Bureau has dealt with over 14,000 clients during the year 2018-19, giving advice over 51,000 times. So we can see how much these resources are actually used. A figure of over £11.5 million in financial gain has been achieved for individuals seeking information, advice and representation across Fife. Fife volunteers gave 2,400 hours of their time. There were 1,300 multiple debt cases handled in Fife, and they assisted 700 clients to appeal unfair benefit decisions. This is just a snapshot of the work that Fife Service does, which in turn is a snapshot of what is done over the country. It continues to be a challenge for people across the country to simply live their daily lives. Many are faced with monetary woes, health issues, unemployment, low wages, housing, transport difficulties and relationship issues. But the advice services provided in our country can help people with many of these issues, with social security, debt, employment and housing being the most common issues raised in recent years. Only last year, Citizens Advice and Rights, or CAS, published a report which showed that the demand for advice on rent arrears had increased by over 40% in 5 years. We shouldn't be surprised given the level of poverty that is on the increase right across Scotland. And whilst I welcome the fact that politicians right across this chamber are here today to say good things about the CAS services, well, they should be, given that it is the decisions of politics that are politicians that have driven more and more and more people into poverty, into difficulty across Scotland. The failed austerity of the Tory party creates poverty on a scale that we haven't seen. And then we have the cuts to local government budgets. And we should remember that rather than, as Kenny Gibson comes in and try and single out North Ayrshire Council because it's Labour, actually every council across Scotland has been looking at their budgets, and I know many of them have looked at the Citizens Advice services and whether cuts can be made there, because they're having to cut every part of their budget. So the warm words are welcome today, Presiding Officer, but we need more than warm words. We actually need the resources and the funding going into the CARS, both in terms of recognising the Scottish Government support, but recognising the Scottish Government decisions to cut council budgets will have a detrimental impact on the very poorest in our society, and that we need to stop that and bring an end to failed Tory austerity, and we'll start to tackle poverty and inequality in Scotland. I conclude.
Thank you very much. I now call on Jamie Hepburn to close the Government. Minister, please.
Thank you, President Officer. And, before I thank Anas Sarwar for bringing forward the debate this evening, I want to begin by wishing you well, President Officer, because I thought you were remarkably brave in describing Jackie Baillie as an old hand.
And I'm resisting...
Can I say I also describe myself as an even older hand,
Well,
if that gives comfort to Ms Bailey?
And I'm going to resist the temptation to link it to Alison Johnson mentioning it being the International Day of the Older Person, because I could run myself into some trouble. But can I thank Anas Sarwar for bringing forward the debate this evening, and to all members who've contributed. It is important that we are given the occasion to recognise the 80th anniversary of the Citizens Advice Bureau network in Scotland. Members across the Chamber have mentioned their own individual bureau. It gives me an opportunity to remark on Fife's 22nd anniversary. Alec Rowley mentioned that, and my sincere congratulations to them for that anniversary. Indeed I will, yes.
On that note, is the Minister aware that...
Sorry, I haven't called you. Richard Lockhead, sorry.
Is the Minister also aware on that note that this week Murray Citizens Advice Bureau will be celebrating their 40th anniversary, and will he pay tribute to all the volunteers and staff over the past 4 decades who have helped so many people, including 2,200 clients just in the last year alone?
Minister.
Well, lest I get a raft of people coming forward with anniversaries, yes, let me... I wasn't aware of that, I am now, and let me also pass on my congratulations to the network in Murray. But it does give me the opportunity, I don't often get the opportunity to talk about my own constituency and my ministerial role, so I would also like to thank the Bureau in Cumbernauld and Kilsyth under the astute leadership of Stuart McMahon for the work they do as well. The origins of the Citizens Advice Bureau network were laid out by a number of members. Kenny Gibson and Annie Wells talked about that through the experience of the coming together through the experience of the Second World War, and of course through that prism they were very much focused on that wartime experience. But there was a similarity with today. The majority of the Bureau that were emerged over the course of the Second World War, 60 being established in Scotland, as we heard, were staffed by volunteers, and that's the same as is the case today. And I want to join with Anas Sarwar, who was of course the first to speak in his debate this evening, in thanking each and every single individual that give their time to volunteer their efforts to support others through the Bureau network. I've always been very struck with the enthusiasm of that volunteer network when I've been able to go in and engage with Bureau across the country, not just in my own area. And like Sarah Boyack, I would concur that it's also very clear that volunteers also draw much back for themselves through their volunteering, but their commitment is absolutely essential. Of course, having been established for 80 years, we know that life can still be tough for many individuals, particularly in the context of where we are just now in terms of the Brexit uncertainty for EU nationals, continued UK government welfare reforms. Bill Kidd put it well. He described Citizens Advice Bureau as an anchor for people in difficult circumstances. They've been that over the course of 80 years and they continue to be that today. And the network is very important to us as a government. We view them very much as a partner, and this is demonstrated in a variety of ways through our work to establish a Scottish social security system. We have the opportunity to try and put dignity, fairness and respect back into our social security system. Rona Mackay, Anas Sarwar and Annabel Ewing, who I used to serve in with the Welfare Reform Committee with in the last parliamentary session, all spoke, as others did, about some of the pernicious changes that we're seeing through the UK Government Welfare Reform agenda. That's why we invest £1.46 million into Citizens Advice Bureau network for welfare reform mitigation, but it's also why we've used the Citizens Advice Bureau, Citizens Advice Scotland, as an important partner in the development of our own service. They, and in that regard, I want to assure Jenny McBalfour they have been an important partner and will continue to be an important partner in the social security system that we set up through Social Security Scotland. They will continue to provide us feedback from their practical experience working with and supporting their client base or citizens, as Anas Sarwar rightly describes them. And Alison Johnson can be assured, I know they will continue to play a strong role in holding us to account for the service we provide by continuing to provide that feedback. Another area that... briefly, if I have time.
Maurice Corrie.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I too congratulate today the Citizens Advice Bureau of Scotland. In particular, thank them for their fantastic support to our armed forces veterans throughout Scotland. Would the Minister therefore ensure that any new funding model he comes up with takes into consideration the needs of our armed forces veterans in Scotland?
Minister.
Well, I'm pleased to be able to say to Mr Corrie, we always place consideration in terms of how we should better support our veterans in Scotland, and that would continue to be the case in terms of any advice services we support, be it through Citizens Advice Scotland and their network, or indeed any other mechanism. Another area I want to mention briefly is the Money Talk team that Rona Mackay and Alison Johnson mentioned, something we are funding to the tune of £3.3 million over a 2-year period. We've worked closely in partnership with Citizens Advice Scotland to create this service. It is making a tremendous difference. I won't rehearse all of the figures again because others set it out, such as Rona Mackay. We see, on average, a return to a person who benefits financially of £1,880 through engaging with that process. A life-changing result, to use the term that Jackie Bailey correctly mentioned. We also have seen, and Annabel Ewing talked about a very good local example, which I'm pleased to hear of in Cowdenbeath, CAB, the work that we're doing to try and support EU nationals. Time doesn't allow me to say too much more about that, but also the one final area of work I want to mention very briefly, President Officer, because I know I'm now up against time, although I did take a couple of interventions. I hope that will be borne in mind, President Officer.
I had noted it. No need to remind me of my duties, Minister.
Well, thank you very much, President Officer. I do appreciate your support and assistance as ever. But the one area I do want to finish on is the consumer advocacy area. Citizens Advice Scotland has played and continues to play, and we provide significant resource this year, over £1.4 million for them to play that role in terms of consumer advocacy. And as we move forward to create a Consumer Scotland, we lodged the bill in June, they will continue to play that role, along with other bodies interacting with consumers in funneling the evidence, the information they have to Consumer Scotland, so that body can get on with its important task when we get on with establishing it. I am very grateful to Anna Sarwar for having had the opportunity to debate the 80th anniversary of Citizens Advice Bureau across Scotland. They've done fantastic work for the last 80 years, and I will continue to do that for 80 years and more.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I close this meeting of Parliament.